Hi, friends, and welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hey, Heartful Parents. Welcome back to the podcast. I am thrilled to be with you again for another week of the podcast, and if you are a regular listener, welcome back. If you are a new listener, welcome. Thrilled to have you here. And I am thrilled to bring you content week over week, and this week is no exception, that really is designed, as I say in the intro, to support you as a parent. Sometimes we talk about partnering, and sometimes we talk about our professional lives, but certainly the heart of all of this is the parenting journeys that we are all on. And I think you're going to find today's interview really interesting, and that it's going to support your parenting journey in a creative way that you probably haven't thought of or considered before. I'll tell you that this information was new to me. And, there's, as a positive discipline educator and a safety expert, like a lot of things that we talk about on the podcast are things that I know about and think about and talk about. And I love connecting with other people in the space who do that as well. But today's guest is talking about something that is completely, in many ways, completely new to me. So I'm excited for you to hear this, and I want to make sure you know at the outset that the tools that today's guest is going to talk about, as she will explain, really work whether you've got young children, teenagers, neurodivergent kiddos, or neurotypical kiddos, and it just brings a creative way to help our kids self-regulate. So our guest today is Samantha Foote. Samantha is a board-certified music therapist, and her mission is to strengthen, guide, and empower parents, children, and other adults to develop emotional awareness, improve social skills, and gain effective coping skills, which results in improved peer relationships, increased family harmony, and just in general, a calmer and more relaxed demeanor. As I mentioned, she's a board-certified music therapist. I wasn't sure what that was, so she's going to explain it. She is also, like me, a positive discipline parent educator and a registered Music Together teacher. She obtained her Bachelor of Science degree from Utah State University and completed her Master of Music with a specialization in music therapy from Colorado State University, my home state, by the way. She is a neurological music therapy fellow and a dialectical behavior therapy informed music therapist. Those are a lot of fancy words for saying Samantha knows what she's talking about when it comes to talking about music and using music to support our kids. And in this interview, Samantha and I dive in to just some general positive discipline techniques that we can all use to connect with our children and build that relationship. And then she shares with you 5 different strategies or 5 different ways of bringing music into those relationships and using music, even if you're not musical, to help our children learn the art and the skill of self-regulation and emotional regulation. So I'm really excited because, like I said, there's a lot of information that Samantha shares here that I had never heard before, never thought about before, and I am excited for you to hear it. Without further ado, Samantha. Samantha, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and to dive into something that we've never talked about on the Heartful Parent podcast before.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. I'm happy to be here.
So I want to start with, obviously I've read your bio for everyone and they've heard what you do. And I have to imagine that there are a number of people listening who are saying, what is a board certified music therapist? Because that was kind of a question that I had when you and I first connected with one another. Like, what does that mean? And what do you spend your days doing in that capacity?
Yeah, a board certified music therapist is someone who has completed a bachelor's degree, at least a bachelor's degree in music therapy. And then I did an internship and then I passed a board certification exam. And now I just work on non-musical goals using music. So I work on cognitive skills, emotional, social, communication, motor skills, all of that. I can work on those things, but I use music to accomplish those goals.
I mean, that is a lot. So you're working directly with kiddos, right? With
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And then you also do some work with their parents, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. So I work mainly with, well, I specialize in working with neurodivergent kids and adults. And then I do parent coaching for the parents who want that. So we talk about like how you can use positive parenting strategies with your child. Music may be involved in that, music might not be involved in that. But I work mainly with the kids, and then, I consult with the parents or we do other things with the parents.
Okay. So you listed off a whole bunch of different skills that we all, as humans, have or need or try to, we work on developing. And what you're saying is that when there's a deficit for someone, or a skill that is not as strong as it needs to be, you can actually use music to help build that particular skill.
Yes. So, for example, if a kid isn't speaking, I'm working with a 3-year-old right now that's not speaking, and we are working on just making sounds. So, you can sing before you can talk. So, I'm singing books to him. We're going through the books together, and the goal is for him to hum the melody and then sing the melody and then sing the words without, well, say the words without the music. So, that's the goal. And right now, I'm just so excited because he is starting to say the sounds within the book. And when he wants to read a book, he'll say ba 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 ba. And so that's just the goal. And so that's how we use music, because music can access more of the brain than any other stimulus. So it can create new neural pathways in the brain where other things might not be able to do it as quickly.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that. I did not
Yeah.
know that. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the way that parents who are probably not board certified music therapists can use music in their parenting. But before we get there, I know that one of the things that you do, because you and I have talked, is you work to help parents really strengthen that connection, right? The relationship that they have with their children, especially because this is your specialty, especially with their neurodivergent children. Let's start with again, maybe another really basic question, but an important one, which is because I think different people have different definitions. When, for your purposes, and when we're talking, what do you mean by neurodivergent? What kind of things fall into that category of neurodivergent?
I'm so glad you asked that because there are some different definitions. So when I'm talking about it, I'm mainly talking about kids who have the diagnosis of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, any of those kinds of diagnoses, OCD, just those kinds of things.
Okay. So, because I know there's obviously other conditions that can cause somebody to be developmentally delayed, but we're talking about sort of a more discrete set of some of those things that can cause challenges in some of those areas, like speech that you were just mentioning.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, as I said, now that we understand what you mean by neurodivergence and sort of what your the types of kiddos that you specialize in working with, parents sometimes really struggle, especially parents who are not neurodivergent, to connect with their neurodivergent kids, right? There are kids who are on the autism spectrum dealing with ADHD, as you said, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and connection may be sometimes difficult because we're like, I don't get it. I don't understand why that's hard for you. What are strategies that you employ and teach to parents to help them strengthen those connections and relationships with their kids?
The first one that I focus on is connection before correction. So a lot of people think that if you don't want your child to do something, then you have to punish them or you have to do something to make them not want to do the behavior anymore. But a lot of times when a kid is quote unquote misbehaving or doing something that you don't necessarily want them to do. They're mostly looking for a connection with you. They're doing it for your attention because all behavior is communication. That's all it is. They're not doing it just to do it. They're doing it, because their sensory needs aren't being met. So a lot of kids, who are neurodivergent, they have differing sensory needs. So they might be having a meltdown because the lights are too bright or it's too loud in the room or they're not getting enough sensory information input into their body. So that's one reason why they might be, like doing something that you don't want them to do. Another reason, like I said, is to get your attention. So they want your attention, whether that's negative attention or positive attention. So if you can increase your connection with them, then that's giving them the attention that they want because they just want to feel a part of your lives. A lot of people think that autistic people don't want friends. They don't want that connection. They don't want to be around other people. And I really don't think that's true. I think they just connect with people in a different way. So just remembering to connect with your child before punishing them or correcting them. Like last night, for example, my son threw a squishmallow against this. I have this like table thing with all these plants on it, and he tipped over one of the plants and just the vase like completely shattered. And so I had to remember at first I was like, why did you do that? And then I was like, okay, we're going to take a step back. He obviously didn't do it on purpose. What was he doing? And he was just playing. And so I thought to myself, how can I connect with him, but also teach him that that is not the right thing to do? That he
Hmm.
can throw the squishmallow, but he can't throw the squishmallow at something that's going to break. And
Right.
so we talked about it. I said, I understand it was an accident. This is why we don't do this. This is what's going to happen if you do this. This is what's going to happen if you keep doing it, and just have, talk about natural consequences. So if he threw the squishmallow and he broke the vase, I'm not going to just send him to his room to be by himself to punish him. We're going to clean it up together. We're going to talk about the consequences. And then if he keeps doing that, I'm going to take the squishmallow away. I'm going to tell
Right.
him, I'm going to take the squishmallow away because you keep doing that. So that's just the main thing that I would talk about is just connection before correction and really looking at why your child is doing what they're doing.
I mean, you're speaking my language because, right, I'm a positive discipline educator,
Yeah.
as well. And that whole connection before correction. And I love that you highlighted the idea that is this is not the way I think parents were taught to think of things when I was growing up, but the idea that, that behavior is communication. And we lose sight of that. It's true for adults too, right? Our
Yeah.
behavior is
Yeah.
also communication, for better or for worse. But I love that you highlighted that because it's so easy when your kid throws the squishmallow and breaks your plant, or the container that the plant was in, to just go, "Ah, like, what have you done?" And to remember that there's something else, that they were trying to accomplish something else. Our attention, fun, right? They're playing. It was, yeah. And so I really appreciate that you highlighted that. You highlighted something else that, uh, mm, as you were describing sort of the way that you responded to this, that I want to call out and have you talk about a little bit, which was that your initial response, or I should say reaction, your initial reaction was, why did you do that? Right? Like, why? Which is the place so many of us go to so quickly. And then you described sort of taking a step back and addressing this in a different way. Talk to me about why that's important. And I mean, that may seem like a basic question, but it's so hard for so many of us, right? Why was that important? And what is, in the big picture, the importance of us regulating our emotions?
Yeah, so I think a dysregulated person cannot help regulate an other dysregulated person. So it's our job as parents to be regulated so we can help regulate our children. And I heard this thing on social media a while ago. I don't remember who it was. I wish I remembered who the creator was, but she said, "I love you more than." So whenever her kids did something, she was like, "I love you more than that plant. I love our relationship more than the container the plant was in." And so that's what I remember now every time that I go to respond to something that my kids do is I love our relationship more than I want to damage it because of they broke something or they did something I didn't want them to do. Because when I yelled at first, you could see him. He was shrinking. He was like covering his ears. And I'm like, oh, I want our relationship to be a good relationship, and I'm not gonna damage our relationship over a broken pot, you know?
Yeah. the, I just have to call this out too. I so appreciate, obviously you work with children professionally, you work with parents as a coach. I'm a parent coach. And I just really appreciate we're keeping it real here because, right, like you and I know what we are supposed to do in those
Mhm.
moments, right? We know connection before correction. We know that the importance of building that trust in that relationship and all of those things. And sometimes your kid breaks the plant or the pot, and we don't always respond in the moment in the way that we quote unquote should. And that's okay because perfection isn't the goal here. What I love though is that you also said that then you realized what you were doing. You tuned into your kid, putting his hands over his ears, stepped back and said, wait a minute, let's start over here.
Yeah.
So good. And the reason I call that out is because I think sometimes parents listen to parenting. I hate the word expert, but people in the parenting space, right? Like you are and I am, and figure that we got it all dialed in, right? We don't screw it up. People, we all screw it up.
Oh, for
Samantha
sure.
screws it up. I screw it up. We all screw it up. So when we do that, when we get it wrong, walk us through a little bit about like how do you teach parents or talk to parents about how to regroup, how to have that moment. Because we all hit that, there's like that crossroads, right? Where we lose it and we could like continue to go off the rails and lose it. Or we can do what you did, where we take a step back, take a deep breath, and regulate ourselves. For parents who struggle with the going off the rails, like taking the path to the right instead of the path to the left, how do you teach parents? Because I think everybody has different strategies, like to get off the path that has us losing it and move on to the path where we're actually regulating.
Yeah. First, I would ask them if they're engaging in self-care, um, not periodically, but what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, just engaging in self-care consistently. Because if they're not, then they're going to go off the rails a lot more than they would if they weren't. And the second thing I say is if you have to tell your kid, I need a timeout, I need to go be by myself, that's okay. You don't have to resolve the situation right in that moment. It's okay to take a step back, go into your room, as long as the kid's not like 2 years old. But
Right.
like my son is 9, so I can leave the room, I can leave, I can regroup, I can come back. For musical strategies, you might go beat on a drum for a while or listen to some music, listen to some angry music, and then listen to calm music, and then come back and then resolve the situation and talk to your child about it. And if you yell at them, I think it's important to apologize and say, look, I lost it. I lost my cool. I'm sorry for yelling at you. This is what I'm going to try and do better. How can we resolve this situation? What are we going to do?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that repair, making good repairs is always um such an important piece. And I feel like it's that moment where before the repair, but when we're at that crossroads and we have to decide, are we going to let ourselves go with the instinct to go off the rails, which we've all done.
Mm-hmm.
I wager we've all done. Or are we going to regroup? And I appreciate that suggestion of saying, mommy or daddy needs a timeout right now, which with a 9-year-old is a very reasonable thing to do. Let's say we feel like we've got our own self-regulation down relatively well, right? Not perfect, because there's no such thing, but like we're doing the self-care, we're losing it less often. When we are starting to lose it, we're able to to regulate. How do we go about teaching self-regulation to our children without music first? And then of course I do, as I said, at the beginning of this, I want to bring this sort of full circle and talk about how music can serve all of this. But just from a big picture perspective, how do
Yeah.
you advocate teaching our young people, our little ones, about their own self-regulation?
I think finding things that work for them, so trial and error, and teaching them when they're not stressed, when they are regulated, teaching them coping strategies or reading books with them about emotions. I really like the Diane Albers Spot books.
Those are
And
great.
yeah, and so, you can say, how are you feeling right now, when they're happy, and say, I feel happy. How do you feel? And talking about emotions when they're self-regulated. And then when they're not regulated, I I suggest not using a lot of words, but just maybe breathing with them or whatever you found that works well. So I recommend breathing. My son was really funny. My other son, he learned breathing to self-regulate. And we went to the doctor and he had to get some blood drawn. And he was like, I'm going to breathe 10 times. I can breathe more. Okay. Okay. I'm going to breathe again. I'm going to breathe again. And so he learned that, breathing helps him calm himself down. And he wasn't doing it perfectly, but he wasn't completely freaking out like he's done in the past.
Uh-huh.
And so just teaching and learning about emotions, learning about coping skills before you're in the state that you need them.
Yes. Yeah. Practicing them with our kids, right? When their brains are able to digest that information. Um, I now want to ask you, obviously you're a board certified music therapist, as we've talked about. You've got some special skills that most of us do not have, right? Um, Parents listening to this may say, well, I'm not musical in the least. Or, I'm thinking about myself. I took piano lessons for many years. I cannot play anymore very well. Um, I can't sing. I cannot carry a tune to save my life. Uh, so how in the world am I going to use music to help build relationship, regulate myself, regulate my kids, and teach skills? That's a big question, I know, but
Yeah.
let's start with maybe go in reverse order. Um, how could you recommend, or do you recommend, that parents who don't have a musical background use music to help with this self-regulation piece?
Yeah, I have 5 coping skills using music that you don't have to be a musician to use. So the first one is teaching the emotions like we talked about. But then when you're teaching the emotions, you can also use GarageBand to make up songs. And GarageBand comes free on all Apple products. And then if you don't have an Apple product, I can tell you other things, but I recommend GarageBand because it is so easy to use, and kids can just go in and I do this with my clients where we go in and just make up songs using GarageBand. And I say, okay, the emotion is happy. What sounds sound happy? And they usually do a melody line. So they get like the guitar or violin or other stringed instruments, and then they put, like the drums to it. And, or they can do, we've done confused where they just use all the different instruments and it sounds really confused, so that's one thing that you can do is just, if they can't express it with words, they can use the music to express what it sounds like. And with neurodivergent kids, I also recommend making up words to songs. So you can say, happiness tastes like, happiness sounds like, and go through the different senses that we have, because a lot of kids who are autistic or other neurodivergent diagnoses, they don't have flexible thinking. And so when you ask them, you're like, what does happiness taste like? Well, they're like, happiness doesn't taste like anything. Well, if you could imagine it could taste like something, what would it taste like? And then that helps them have the more flexible thinking and abstract thinking that they kind of it's not a strength in a lot of kids.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
then also going through that, you can say, for anger, for example, I feel angry when, and get a specific example of when they feel angry. I feel angry when, and we do that 4 times in the song. And then after that, we say, when I feel angry, I can, and do 4 separate coping skills that you can do when you're angry. So I can scream into a pillow, I can listen to music, I can go for a walk, just all the different things. And then they have specific things that they say they can do when they're angry, that they want to do when they're angry. And that's we make up the song, and then I just speak the words into the song. We don't make up a melody for the words. And that's one way that you can do it. You don't have to be a musician. Like GarageBand has these things that they just automatically play strum patterns, like if you're on a guitar or something. And if you need help with GarageBand, just contact me and I'll help you. But
I have to tell you, I have an iPhone.
uh-huh.
I've never played with GarageBand
Yeah.
at all. It
Yeah.
never even occurred to me, Samantha,
Yeah.
that that could be used as something for a non-musician to use as a way of talking about emotions with their children. I love the creativity of that idea. Um, I mean, that's just fantastic. So, okay, sorry, you said you had 5. I did, so that's number
Yeah.
1. Okay, tell me about number 2.
So the next one is making playlists based on your emotions. So if you're angry, make an angry playlist, make a happy playlist, make a sad playlist. And then there's this thing called the ISO principle in music therapy, where it just means you take music and you use music to go from one emotion to another. If you're feeling angry, you don't just want to listen to calm music right off. You really want to listen to angry music. Feel the anger, go through the emotion, and then slowly move into calm music or happy music or whatever music you want to listen to, or whatever emotion you want to feel. But if you have those playlists set up before you need them, then you can just, click on my angry playlist and there's all the music. And I don't have suggestions for songs. People, that's the number one question I get asked. Well, what song should I use? I don't know. It's very specific to you. Like country music makes me happy, but for other people, it might just not, that's not their thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's another thing that you can do is just make the playlist.
Okay, I love that you said that, because I was going to ask you earlier when you were talking about, you had mentioned this earlier, that you could go, when you're self-regulating, go listen to an angry playlist if you're angry and then listen to calm music. And I thought, I'll be honest, I was like, well, that seems weird. Why would I listen to angry music if I'm angry? Like, won't that just make me more angry? But what you're saying is, like, listen to the angry music, or what that is for you. Um, let that emotion percolate a little bit and then transition to music that is calmer or happier, or whatever emotion you're going for. And that actually having the transition between the music styles will actually help the emotions transition as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I did another thing I did not know. Love that, and I'm going to try that. Also, I will say, I'm not the hugest country music fan, but side note, Beyonce's new country song, I'm so in love with it. So fun. Okay, the, which is neither here nor there, but for those who haven't heard it, Beyonce can do a
Yeah.
mean country song, let me tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Samantha, what's number 3?
That is creating personal retreats through music. So even if you're not a musician, you can sit down at the piano with your child and just play, just improvise on it. And if you're not a fan of improvising or you're scared of improvising, you can start with just one finger and just play individual keys on the piano. And I recommend that you start with playing the black keys, because the black keys on a piano create a really nice scale that will sound good no matter what notes you play, no matter what order you play them in. It will sound good if you play it with another person. And then that can help you and your child create a stronger connection. There is so much research saying that when you engage in music with another person, it decreases your cortisol, it increases dopamine, increases the oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, all those different things. So that's something you can do. You can have a dance party. You can listen to music together. You can do Mad Lib songwriting, where you just take a song and you get the lyrics to it, and then just take out, like different nouns or adjectives or whatever, and then put your own words in there. And you can do it where you're serious, so you know what the context of the song is, or you can do it where it's just funny, where you don't tell the person what the song is and you just put in the words that they say. So that's really fun to do too. And you can find, if you just Google Mad Lib songwriting, it will come up with songs that are already done for you that you can put in your own words too.
I love that. Uh, and so is that part of the like sitting down at the piano and playing around? It's just this whole improvisation. We're making up words.
Yeah.
We're making up lyrics. We're making up songs as a way of releasing some of those feel good bonding hormones,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
will help regulate.
Yep. Yep.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, the creativity of this is appealing to me, even though, like I said, I do not consider myself a musician. Okay, what's the 4th strategy that you teach?
The 4th one might be my favorite. It's facilitating communication. So if you're very angry or if your child is angry, I recommend drum talk, where you each get a drum and you match your child's energy. So they drum and then you drum and you go back and forth. I did this with some siblings who came into my office and they were just so angry with each other. And I gave them each a drum and I said, don't interrupt each other, just play this drum and have a conversation like you're talking. And they were very aggressive to begin with, but by the end of it, they were more calm. And then they were able to actually have a conversation once they got all the energy out. But it's important, if you're doing this with your kid, to match their energy, because they need to hear back what they're playing, and then as they get calmer, then you can get calmer with it.
That is brilliant. So I don't happen to have drums in my house, but I suppose I could use a Tupperware thing or something
Yeah.
that tipped upside down, right? Like I don't need to go
Yeah.
buy drums for this.
Yeah, you could use body percussion, so just hitting your legs or hitting your chest or getting, like you were saying, anything out of your kitchen. You can use wooden spoons on pans, you can use bowls, whatever you want.
Love it. Okay, that one
Yeah.
is super fun. That one is
Yeah.
super fun. So tell me what you called it again.
Drum talk.
Drum talk. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're having a conversation without words, which
Mhm.
I have to imagine, especially for the neurodivergent kiddos that you work with who struggle with speech in any form, that drum talk is a great tool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I'm thinking about my 6-year-old who, appears to be neurotypical, that like I think she would love this as a way
Yeah.
of working through some frustration or feelings, or when she's mad at me because her 14-year-old sister can do things that she's not allowed to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She's not quite recognized the age difference between them.
Yeah.
I could see this being huge and
Yeah.
a really kind of a fun way to connect with her.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the 5th and final
Yeah,
one?
the last one is just aiding in transitioning. So some kids who are neurodivergent have what's called PDA, or pathological demand avoidance. And it's just when you ask them to do something, they instantly go into fight or flight. If you create a demand for them, they are in fight or flight. They're not going to do what you ask them to do, and they're going to retreat, or, well, the fight or flight, whatever. So you can create sounds, or this works with kids who don't have PDA too. Just so you're not telling them what to do, you have a sound and you say, okay, when this song comes on or this certain sound comes on, that means it's time to do this. When this song comes on, that means it's time to do this. And you don't create like a bunch of different songs. It's usually just like one song. And that just means it's time to transition away from what they're doing and go into a new activity. You can also do it where a certain song comes on and that means they have like 5 more minutes. But then when it comes on, it's not you telling them what to do. It's them knowing that, oh, I hear this sound. That means that it's time to do this.
Such a good idea.
Oh,
Such a good idea, because I know transitions, and the parents that I work with, whether they have neurodivergent kids or neurotypical kids, transitions, getting a kid to move from, watching whatever, Paw Patrol, to getting
yeah.
dressed for school or getting out the door for whatever it is, can be really, really challenging for parents.
Yeah.
And having music serve as the sort of the conduit for that transition strikes me as such a lovely way to make that happen, and take us out of the conversation, essentially,
Yeah.
or at least minimize our role in the conversation. Okay, these are super fun. And when I started to ask you about this, I said, well, let's talk about how the music tools that you use to help parents and their kids self-regulate, and said, then I'll ask, how we use it for connection and whatever. But it strikes me that all of these are building connection as they go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing quite like well, in my family, we're a big fan of kitchen dance parties,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, cannot resist a good kitchen dance party. And that strikes me as like just there's not necessarily a purpose behind it other than we're having fun together and we're connecting and it's
Mm-hmm.
building relationship. I'd love to hear, Samantha, if you're willing to share a story or two about a family that you have worked with who's used one or more of these tools, and seen some successes come from those in the way that they regulate or in the connection that they've built. I know you see a lot of different, you worked with a lot of different kids and families.
Yeah.
Where have you seen this work?
I really love this. One happened recently. This kid was working with me and he was the typical preteen who's, I don't want to do this. I'm too cool for this, whatever. And then we started working on emotions using GarageBand. And his mom was telling me that he had a lot of outbursts towards his siblings, towards, his parents. And he started writing music using GarageBand, and he's able to do it when I'm not there now. And he's really like become a much calmer person because he's able to write the songs, and then he's able to listen to the songs that he writes. And then he has some trouble with self-confidence, and his self-confidence has improved too because he's able to show his songs to his family and be like, look what I did. I wrote this song. And he's just a much calmer person, more self-confident, and just blossoming, I guess you could say. Like
Yeah,
he's really finding his own. And I love that. I love that for him.
I love that too. And what strikes me about that story that you just told is this isn't a tool just for little kids.
Yeah.
This is a tool that can be used through those tween and teen years as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Samantha, this is I said this at the beginning, like we've certainly we've talked about positive parenting and emotional regulation here and there on the podcast, but never delved into it through this lens of music and how non-musical, non-board certified music therapists can use this. And I'm so grateful for these ideas that you have brought. I am going to try some of them with my own kiddos. I can see I can see both of my daughters loving this idea of GarageBand and the drum talk and a number of these strategies. So I want to say thank you, because there's such a there's a creativity to this that I think we often don't bring to our parenting. For those who are listening to this interview and having a similar response, like, this is really cool. What are the best ways that they can connect with you or get access to resources that you have available?
You can go to my website, which is boisemusictherapycompany.com. And then I also have a podcast. It's called Every Brain is Different. We just celebrate neurodiversity, give parents positive parenting tools for, parenting neurodivergent kids. And then we're on Instagram at Boise Music Therapy or Every Brain is Different.
Love it. And we will make sure that all of the links for those are in the show notes, as well as I know you've got like a neurodivergent terminology guide and some parenting tips that we will, all of that will be in the show notes so that people can find it easily and connect with you. Samantha, thank you for bringing this information and these creative ideas to all of us, but especially those parenting kiddos who are neurodivergent. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you for having me on. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Like I said at the beginning of this, Samantha presented some strategies and some tools to me that I had never heard of, and I think are a really fun and creative and interesting way to think about getting at that emotional piece, that emotional self-regulation piece that we all want our kids to learn. It was novel to me and something that I think could be a lot of fun. I look forward to trying it with my kids. If you try any of these tools or strategies with yours, please reach out. Let me know how they go. Let me know what you think. Let me know if they're effective. And sort of how it lands with your kids. Again, whether they're, young, whether they're teens, neurodivergent, neurotypical, I'd love to hear how this works for you. Until next week, have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.